Assalamu alaikum. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing well. So, in the name of God, we are going to start our first episode in the linguistics series. This series is going to be based on George Yule book, which is underlined and titled "The Study of the Language." So, this episode is going to be about the origins of language. So let's start with the context. Let's imagine that you and your friends are discussing the language stuffs, and you asked, what were the first nations that speak language, that spoke language, and what are the reasons that push them to speak language, why they need language, and how it started. So in this video, we're going to answer all these questions. In this introduction, it is claimed that it would be an easy task to understand and to explain the first, the development of the spoken language. But unfortunately, because there is no direct evidence, there is an absence of a direct evidence, which would be the spoken language, the written language, sorry, which is discovered and traced back 5,000 years ago only. There's no evidence, and because also that the spoken language have developed between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. There's no evidence, so some theories. So some theorists here gave some theories that explains and some assumptions about the first and the emergence of the language, or say the origin of language. Here we have 6 theories. Let's start first with the first theory, which is the divine source. This theory claims that language, there is no human touch in language. Language, it is not created by human. Language, it is only given by a God, by God, or it's a divine source. And in many many religions and traditional religions, it is claimed that the language is given by a divine source. For Islam, there is a verse of Holy Quran here. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So here in this verse, Allah said that language is taught, and that Allah teaches Adam the language. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And in the biblical traditions, the book of Genesis mentioned that God created Adam and whatsoever, and then called every living creature that was the name thereof. The same thing in the Hindu tradition, that Sarasvati, which is a divine source as well, which is a god that gives the language. So here many religions have different assumptions, but the main point is that here language, it is assumed that it is given by a divine source. Here in the second theory, which is called the natural sound source, here we will mention briefly to the key word here. It is imitation. Imitation. This theory based on the imitation, that it claims that language, it is created based on imitating the source of the sound. We have Bow theory. Bow theory and the natural crisis emotions grasp on the onomatopoeia concept. Here the idea is that language, or let's say the names of things, for example, let's say clock. Clock, it is called clock because it produces some sounds that are close to a clock. Like clock, it is called clock. Why? Because it produces some sounds like clock, clock, clock. So here we have Bow theory, that it is that the things or language is created by imitation of the sound, that produced by the source of that sound. The onomatopoeia as well have the same idea. And natural crisis emotions, it claims that emotions are called or are named based on the sounds that a person experience those emotions produce. For example, pain have certain sound. For example, happiness. For example, many emotions have different, and when you experience a certain emotion, you produce different sounds. So those emotions are called based on the sounds that are produced. Let's move to the third one, which is the social interaction sound. Here we have Yo-Hey-Ho theory. This theory brings forth the idea that language is originated by the sounds person involved in a physical effort make. So the idea is like the social. It is like the natural sound source. It claims that the language is produced and it is originated because or based on the sounds that previous people, primitives, produce when they are involved in a physical effort. For example, if they are cutting wood, they produce some sounds. So these sounds are used in communication. And on the other hand, that those people need, and it is a requirement to organize a social organization, some communities, some societies. They organize those societies and need the language to communicate within those. So they use those sounds or those grants or those curses to communicate between them, and then it is developed over time and reaches for example, those nowadays languages that we speak. So this is the social interaction sound. The next theory is the physical adaptation source. Sorry. So the physical adaptation source theory based on the idea that the language is originated and it is emerged because our skull structure or our speaking organs got developed. So like the notion that, for example, monkeys are almost similar to the human face and structure, but they cannot speak. The difference here is that it is claimed that humans have those organs that are responsible and those features, those vocal features that are responsible, that allows them to speak. But here, this theory is got criticized because it only describes the development of features, of speaking features, and there is no relation between the organ, the language emergence and those. It does not describe. It does not describes deeply. It does not describe deeply the notion of the language origins. Let's move to the next one, which is the tool making source. Here it is claimed that tool making process, the place in the brain that is responsible for those manipulation of tools and those processes is the same part, and it is related with the part of language using. So because of this interrelation between those tool making and language use, the manipulation of tools result development in language use. And the language, those language that is produced and is developed, it is implied in naming the tools that those primitives made, and to classify them and organize them and distinguish one from another. So this theory is based that tool making source is related to language use and it causes development of the language use. Here with the last theory, which is the genetic source, here we have the innateness hypothesis. This hypothesis comes with the idea that the capacity of speaking is innate. It is not something that we acquire over time, but the capacity of speaking is innate and hardwired in the human offspring. So since birth, we have this ability of speaking, of language using. So this hypothesis comes with the same idea that it is a genetic. It is something that is genetic, something that is innate in the in human being. So let's make some summary briefly. The divine source claims that language is given by God, not by humans, or a divine source. The natural sound source, it is claimed that language is produced by imitation, and here we have example of bow theory, onomatopoeia, which describes this process of referring to the objects based on the sound that they produce. Natural cries of emotions. Here, the social interaction, we have Yoheho theory, which comes with the perspective that language is produced by the sounds that people or person involved in a physical effort make, and it is used in the social communication of those primitives in a form of grants and curses which develop over time. The physical adaptation source, this theory comes with the idea that the origins of language can be explained by the development of human speaking organs, which, as we said, it is criticized because it is not, it sheds the light on development of the physical development, and neglects the language origins. Here, the tool making source. It is claimed that tool making process, it is related with the language use, and then the tool making process helps the language use, helps in the language use, and the primitives or the early humans used this language to call and to name the tools that they make. Here, the genetic source, it claims that capacity of speaking is innate, and it is a capacity that we human have since birth, and it is hardwired in the human offsprings. So those six theories that describe the origins of language. I hope you liked the video, and next time, if Allah wills, we are going to deal with the animal and human language. See you.